So welcome to today's video where I'm focusing on the bankruptcy exemptions in the District of Columbia. Now, if you don't reside in DC, that's okay. You can still watch the video and have an understanding of how exemptions work. I have some states, most states on my website and of course on my YouTube channel, so you can look through there. Obviously, with so many states, it's taken me a while to go through all of them, but hopefully your state is there. And then if so, you'll see I'll have specific statutes and everything that would help you out when you're filing for bankruptcy. Now, when we're talking about the District of Columbia, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. First, we have, of course, the court system and we have the trustees. If you In the description below, you'll see there'll be a link for the trustee. You can click that link, it'll take you to my site, and it'll give you all the information on trustees that you need. Likewise, there's one as well for the bankruptcy court system. So, again, click it, all the contact information is there for the judges and everything else. And of course, my blog will explain the exemptions just like I'm doing now. The only difference is I'll actually have statutes listed. Now, when we're talking about filing for bankruptcy, the first thing you have to do is meet the residency requirements. And that's not unique. That's every state. I live in northern Florida, 30, maybe 40 minutes away from the border of Georgia. I just can't say I like Georgia. Seems like a fun place. Let me go file for bankruptcy there. No, I've lived in all my life in Florida. I don't get to pick and choose where I file. I have to file in Florida and most likely in the jurisdiction I live in that county. Now, the reason that's done is because of a term that we call forum shopping. You don't want people jumping around trying to pick the best spot for them. The thing is, you can do that in bankruptcy because bankruptcy, they have different exemptions in every state. And for example, Georgia and Florida is a perfect example. The exemptions in Florida for your homestead are only $21,500 versus Florida that has unlimited exemption. So let's reverse it. Let's say I'm now living near the border of Georgia and I say I would really love to protect the equity in my home. What are the residency requirements so I can just take advantage of that? Well, at the minimum, I have to live out of 180 days, so out of 6 months, I have to live in Florida at least 91 days. That allows me to file in Florida. But is that it? No, absolutely not. Because the next thing is, in order to apply the exemptions of Florida, I have to live there 2 years, 730 days. So while you could do forum shopping, you see the issue of you're going to have to be there a substantial amount of time. And if it comes to homestead issues protecting your homestead, then the magical number is 1,215 days that you have to own that property. So there's foreign shopping in essence, but because of the restrictions on time, it doesn't make it easy. But realistically, if you do live in a border state like that, especially like Jacksonville area, etc., so close to Georgia, it is common to see tags in this area one way or another. And there's a lot of people who come from Georgia to come work in Florida. So, it's worth it to be able to, if you can move to Florida and then just drive to work every day in Georgia, get that homestead protection. The only problem is, of course, any lawsuits that come along the way. But hopefully these lawsuits take a long time and you can get protected with the residency requirements. Now, not every state does it or district. I think it's 18 in total. I'm doing this off the top of my head. I could be wrong, so don't guide yourself by that number. But some districts allow you to pick between state or federal. Now, this is important because this goes right back to this issue here of the residency requirements. If you're leaving a district and you're going to another state, you have to figure out, am I filing now to use my state's exemptions or the exemptions better somewhere else? So this is the same thing now when it comes to this issue here of should I choose the federal exemptions or should I use the DC exemptions? So you have to look at your facts, you have to see what assets you have and take it from there. For federal exemptions, I think it's a little bit under $180,000 that's protected for homestead, while the District of Columbia has fully protected homestead, which honestly makes sense because the pricing of DC homes are so expensive that would only make sense that they would provide 100% protection. So there's an example where you probably wouldn't want the federal exemptions. But if you don't own a home, then there might be other exemptions that apply to you, and you say this might be to your advantage. Now, I would explain the issue of the 1,215 days. Um, Homestead exemption. Florida is one of the few states that does offer it. Most states do not. That's why I go back to the example of Georgia, where it might be to your example to say, you know what, I live on the border. Let me just move over to Florida, change your tag, change your license, and wait it out and then file for bankruptcy. So keep that in mind. You always have to comply with the residency requirements, and then you have to figure out what's best for you. Now, I just want to go over a few more exemptions and then we'll wrap this up. The personal property, real high. Okay, not real high, but it's not bad at all. But there's an example of how exemptions work. Suppose you have $14,000 in personal property. Now, what's personal property? Basically everything you own. I'm using a laptop. If I file for bankruptcy tomorrow, I have to mention that laptop. I have to mention the screen. I have a separate larger screen attached to that. All that is personal property, my furniture, etc. Every state, of course, is different. So make sure that you don't get confused, and make sure that, as I put here, research, research, and research. I have found consistently, now that I'm going state by state, I find endless errors when it comes to these issues of certain issues. For example, there's, you see, the cemetery plots. I keep seeing that they were citing a statute that was non-existent. Maybe that statute existed at some point and maybe it's been changed since then, but that's part of the issue of doing research. I use software, so I know, at least for me, my information is updated, but I can tell you, whether you've been using AI or blogs of attorneys for their actual business tends to not get updated. So one example is Florida, and I warn my students about this all the time, and they continue making the mistakes because they're not paying attention, I guess. But Florida, the exemptions for a car was $1,000. Now it's $5,000. I believe this happened July of last year. So everybody keeps putting $1,000 on their essays when I know it's 5,000. So you have to be careful. This is even shocking, but I've gone to the actual state websites where they have the statutes listed, and even their statutes are outdated. So go figure, but it happens. You have to be careful, because um, if you apply the exemptions wrong, then ultimately what's going to happen is you're putting yourself at risk of losing that property. Now, let me go back here to the exemptions. If I have $14,000 in personal property and then we apply the exemption amount of 8625, what do I have left over? 5375. Now, what does that mean? Well, this is what belongs to the bankruptcy estate, and the trustee's job is to protect the bankruptcy estate. So the trustee would say, you're 5375 over. How do you want to handle this? Do you want to just, make a payment plan? Typically, if you file chapter 7, the trustee will accept a payment plan of 10 to 12 months. So over the next 10 to 12 months, you would pay those amount to keep those assets. Now, um, if you're filing chapter 13, it's the same thing. The numbers don't change. You're just stretching out how much you're paying overall. But when it comes to this issue with the trustee, and you see it a lot with cars, if someone paid off their car, the trustee has to protect the bankruptcy estate. They give you the option, pay it back or sell it. Doesn't matter which one happens, the trustee gets that money and then disperses it to all the different creditors. So that's basically how exemptions work. So you have to also make sure that you are, and by the way, because I know a lot of time you see this all the time, clients say, I knew I wasn't protected, so I transferred the assets to my sister, my cousin, my mom. You're just asking for more problems. It's a fraudulent transfer. The trustee has the right to sue that family member or friend that has your asset now. They're going to increase fees like you cannot imagine, to the point that person's going to have to file for bankruptcy. So don't even get into that game. Whatever you have that's not protected is not protected. Deal with it, and that's it. If you can't afford the payment plan of 10 to 12 months, then you have to start looking at Chapter 13. Okay. Now, one thing that I wanted to point out here, tools of the trade, not much, is 1,625. But let me explain what that is. Tools of the trade is just another exemption. So besides this, it will be another exemption that you're being offered for if you own a business. Now, in my case, what do lawyers have? We don't really have much. Laptops, things like that, and those things depreciate in value. But hey, if I can protect another $1,600 in laptops, I have 3 laptops. So if I can add a little more protection, why not? I'll take advantage of it. Maybe not so much for us, but I always think of landscapers Their sit down mowers, four, five, $10,000 they spend on these things, the weed eaters, everything else, the blowers. They really, in a hurry, have $30,000, $40,000 in equipment. Now, we're saying tools of the trade here, and I just mentioned $30,000, but I want to be clear. It's not based on how much you paid for it, but how much it's worth today. And that's called the fair market value. I like to say garage sale value or Craigslist. I usually tell clients if a landscaper comes to me, I know they spent the 30,000, but my question to them is how much is it worth today? If you had to sell it to me for a reasonable price, what is reasonable? I didn't rip you off, you didn't rip me off. How much would you post it on Craigslist or in a garage sale? And so that's the number to go by. So remember, it's not what you paid for, it's what it's worth today. Just same thing, no different than a car, no different than your home and everything else. It's not what you paid for, it's what the house is worth today. All right. So there gives you an example of the exemptions. Again, you can go straight to my site to get the exemptions and some of the statutes as well. Now, of course, for all of you that are paralegals or legal study students, you have my textbook available. I have YouTube videos. There's a separate category you'll see there where I go through each chapter of my textbook, summarizing it, but in video form. So whether you're a legal student, paralegal, or just someone looking to file for bankruptcy, you can always feel free to post any comments in the section below. All right. Take care, everybody. I wish you the best of luck with your bankruptcy case and continuing your debt-free journey. Bye-bye.